to another episode of Rugby with Pads. We're going to continue our series of short, sharp messagings and off-season musings, a fancy brain dump, I think I called it in the logo for these ones. And this is episode 6, I think. We're going to talk about rookies. Now, rookies is top of mind at the moment. For many of you in Dynasty, you're going to be trading for rookie picks. We've got the draft coming up in a couple of weeks, I think about it now. I think it's 3 weeks tomorrow or something like that. It starts. Anyway, really soon, we're going to be thinking about rookies. We're going to be wondering where they are, all that kind of stuff. But if you're in Dynasty, the gap between the actual NFL draft and when you're drafting your rookies is normally pretty short. We normally kind of try to get it done in May. And unless you're really deep in the weeds, you know exactly who they are, what their numbers are, all that kind of stuff. It's really hard to find out who's going to be good value for your team. Obviously, this year, Ashton Jeanty is going to be amazing. The wide receivers, Taylor McMillan is probably going to be the number one wide receiver. We know Cam Ward is going to be serviceable. Outside of that, what can you really gain? We know it's a running back heavy draft, but that's a bit of group thing. So what I did was think about how you can find sleepers in rookies, because from a Dynasty perspective, you're looking to build something over time. But from a redraft perspective, you need to find the things and people who are going to give you an edge this year. And that's what I'm going to look at. So sleepers, themselves, it's not necessarily about relying on previous success, because if you rely on previous success, you'll draft the same team every year, and everyone always does. The answer is really finding players who are not on other people's radars, and in redraft, a lot of those times are rookies. It's people whose value is depressed or who are primed for a surge in productivity. These are sleepers. What defines a sleeper is pretty different each year, the rate of success and what you're looking for. But I think the most reliable place still is rookies, as I said. It's because there are so many unknowns. People are not looking to take big risks upon those. These guys have a depressed value regardless, but they can still perform on a high level. Even those going early in draft time, so even though those 101, 102 picks in actual draft picks are going late in fantasy football. Last year, for example, Jayden Daniels was a second overall pick in the NFL, but humble brag, and thank you for this trophy, guys, I managed to pick him up in the 11th round of a redraft league, behind the likes of Brock Purdy, CJ Stroud, Geno Smith, Jordan Love, and Justin Herbert, none of whom sniffed the top 10 and who are about 8 points a game behind the pace. Again, I can do stats too. In this series, if you want to hear stats, listen. And I think it's different for each position. Going on QB, that's a really obvious one, because we'll start from there, because we talked about Jayden Daniels already. At QB, you're looking for either mobility as a cheat code if you've got a scrambler, or experience. Now, if you've got both, it's even better. Experience is discounted as why didn't that player enter the draft earlier? And you think about the older guys, the joke about Stetson Bennett being older than Matthew Stafford and being drafted to the Rams. But I think the counter to that is Penix. Penix played a lot of football, and he seemed composed, and you can see what's there. If he got a chance earlier in the season, I think he would have done a lot better. And that level of experience as well, because Jayden Daniels played a lot of football as well. So did Bo Nix. Both of them were double-digit picks, as in like in the later rounds, with Bo being largely undrafted. But he would have been a great sleeper for you. Now, not saying you have to draft these guys to make them work. You can keep an eye on them as well. If they didn't go drafted like Bo Nix, if you picked them up on waivers, what a fantastic pickup that would have been. Wide receiver, I think, is a bit different. And I think the ones where you can find value is where you look towards situation and the ability to dominate in the slot. Now, the slot, for those of you who don't know, is a position where you play on the field. It's closer to the line of scrimmage, closer to the centre, and generally it's shorter yardage. But in PPR, which we'll get onto another time, it's really valuable position. Having bad teammates as well it's an interesting way to analyse it. It's a bit of a double-edged sword. Having bad teammates can mean a lot of targets as they stand out at being that much better than the other guys. However, if your team has no one else, they know the ball's coming to you, and that can be a problem. You've got no decoy. The boom-bust nature of Malik Neighbours was one side of that. Yeah, he was great. He was better than everyone else, but everyone knew it was going to him. So sometimes you just get locked out of games by a lockdown corner. Or you just couldn't throw to him. He didn't get the targets. But the consistency shown by Brian Thomas Jr., a late pick in 2024, was thanks to more mediocre teammates. So think about the situation. He was able to carve out a role of being a bit better than the guys around him. Not so much better that it was obvious that the ball was going to him. Lad McConkey was the other guy as well I wanted to kind of talk about, because everyone discounted him as being small slot guy, but I loved that, and I went hard in on that, and he was great. He went to a great situation, being a slot guy, being a run after the catch guy. He was bound to dominate in short, uncontested yardage when you had other guys around him who were potentially deep threats, who weren't that good either. Like Joshua Palmer and Quentin Johnson really didn't have a good showing last year. Anyway, he led him to a wide receiver 11 finish, despite most people dismissing him on size. So that depresses value even more, making him a better sleeper. Again, he went undrafted in a lot of leagues last year. At running back, I think the equation is relatively obvious. You want youth and burst. Now, this year's running back class might be a bit different because you've got a lot of bigger guys coming in who are potentially 3-down workhorses, a lot wider class as well. But last couple of years, it's been obvious who's going to go well. Last year was a down year for running backs, but Bucky Irving broke the mold. And guess what he had? He had burst. Maybe not on paper, but he definitely had burst between the tackles. And he was young. Devon A. Kane the year prior would have done you proud with some 50-point games in PPR scoring. Crazy. It's an easier position to predict. And generally, you've got to think about the situation. If there's someone ahead of you, you're going to get less chances. Volume is king, all of that fun stuff. But running back as a position in general is a premium because there's so many injuries and it's really hard to find gems. But with this Stack 2025 class, you might find a difference maker amongst the elite options in the rookie group, meaning you're going to be drafting your Christian McCaffreys, your Derrick Henrys in the first couple of rounds, your Saquon Barkleys, obviously. And then you think about everything. You could get a good level of production from a couple of guys later on. I think we're going to talk about Moneyball in this situation and looking for your second guys at another point. But those are the kind of situations that I really like. And you can win a league on sleepers. Zig while everyone zags. Go for the big wide receiver while you go for a rookie sleeper running back. Finally, tight ends. We're not going to go every position because this is not an IDP. I do play IDP, but this is not an IDP podcast. Definitively, my level of disdain for the position. I love tight ends. Don't get me wrong. I just don't understand how they work in fantasy football. Sometimes it's well documented, but yeah, I still hate kickers more, obviously. But in recent years, I have softened a little bit because I've won some leagues with some good tight ends. The thing to look for the thing to look for and to avoid is guys who are superior blockers because they get really high draft capital, but they're never going to be used in the right situation. Michael Mayer was all the rage coming into the draft, and we all thought because he was so highly drafted, I think he was drafted in the first round, he thought he was going to be great, but tight end 64 last year because he was overshadowed by a pseudo wide receiver in Brock Bowers. Who in turn beat the rookie record reception on the way to a tight end 1 finish. Yeah. But how can you predict that? There's two schools of thought, but athleticism, I think, is the main marker. If you followed the athleticism traits, you probably would have led to Sam Laporta and having a breakout. And I'm going to suggest relative inexperience in pro-style blocking offensive helped him be a good pass catcher. And you could see he blocked more in year 2 than he did in year 1. He was almost, the first year was like, just go and show us what you've got. Go and be raw, go and be athletic before you start getting beaten up in the trenches. Maybe there's a little bit of Dalton Kincaid in that as well. I think unleashing a player in year 1 as a pass catcher would have led you to some great decisions, but also would have led you to some tough ones as well, because more often than not, they break out in year 2 or 3. And when they've done their time, and that would have led you to a number 3 finish last year for Trey McBride, a number 7 finish for Tucker Kraft, an improving status for Isaiah Likely, who's done his time doing the grunt stuff. So I think you need to think about situation, athleticism, and just guess tight ends, and then you'll find your sleeper in your rookie picks. I think something to consider is that all these traits in Dynasty are completely muted because the value of rookies is so highly subjective and so escalated as well. I mean, there are people who play Dynasty and that never play their rookie picks and just, trade them away for veterans. There are people who play only rookies, for example. But in Dynasty, you're likely to hyper-focus on these guys and hone in closely on these traits. So I think playing Dynasty, whatever you want to call it, will also help you play redraft and find sleepers in those rookie picks in your redraft leagues. Also in Dynasty, you're much likely to hold on to players who may not break out in year one, meaning that sleepers are not just a good thing for the rookie breakout, but that is also a kind of key indicator for success later on. My point I'm trying to make here is that team building in Dynasty helps you think about players differently and might help you unearth something that you feel is a really interesting trait in a player when you're playing redraft as well. Ultimately, I've talked around the subject a lot, but there's no silver bullet here for predicting sleepers, especially in the rookie classes. You're better off looking at trends, though, and traits than you are about throwing a dart. Hopefully this episode has been not too confusing and you've kind of got where I'm going here. Once again, thank you all so much for listening. If you want to support the pod, Rugby with Pads on all the social media. If you want to go support the pod monetarily from as little as £1, get yourself some merch, all of that kind of stuff, www.rugbywithpads.com. As always, I've been Sam, I've been your host. Thank you so much for listening, and I will see you all very soon on the Virtual Gridiron.